Hey, you guys, welcome to the show. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Meg Faure. She is author of so many books: Baby Sense, Weaning Sense, Sleep Sense, Parent Sense, and the Parent Sense app. She's amazing. She's an occupational therapist. And what we talk about today is baby sensory world and how it impacts sleep, feeding, baby development, and magically, and of course, through our conversation, we correlated the sensory world with how to improve our EC practice and how to understand how each of our babies individually react to doing elimination communication. And I just cannot wait to unveil all of the things that we discovered during this talk. Enjoy the interview. Please subscribe and hit like to help more people learn about EC. Enjoy. Hey, you guys. I am so excited to have another interview on the podcast, and also this will be on our YouTube. This is such a cool topic. Well, we're going to hit a couple of topics actually, so I'm not going to tell you what they are yet. You'll just have to keep listening. But I have on the show Meg. She is an occupational therapist from South Africa, although she's currently in France. She's an infant specialist and the author of 8 parenting books. And I want her to take over from here and tell you a little bit about herself. Welcome to the show, Meg.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's awesome to be here with you. Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I'm an OT. I actually did most of my specializations in the States. I lived in New York for a period of time and then returned to South Africa. And my passion has always been around the baby's sensory world. I think that if we understand how babies develop on a sensory level and how the sensory world affects them, we can really impact our parenting. And so going down that journey, I actually authored 8 parenting titles, but every single one of them has been to do with the sensory world. So Sleep Sense had to do with sleep and sensory. Weaning Sense had to do with weaning your baby from a sensory perspective. So it's always been around the baby's sensory world. I founded an app many years ago. Actually, it was one of the first apps on the App Store in 2007, like going back a long time. And now have more recently got a new app called Parent Sense. And that's what takes up most of my time now. I do have a clinical practice and I work with moms with sleep problems predominantly. So that's a little bit about me and kind of what I've been doing in the last few years.
That's wonderful. Well, welcome to the show. I can't wait to educate our audience they're all here to learn about infant potty training and elimination communication, or EC, from birth. And I think that knowing our babies on a more holistic level is always going to help inform the EC practice. It's going to help us be more confident moms, easier on ourselves because we don't just automatically know how to do all this stuff. And I certainly don't know a lot about the sensory world other than I do have a background in dance. So I'm very body-centered, and with my kids, I'm very body-centered. So maybe that's something innate, but I think that's kind of unique to me. I don't think that there are a lot of our audience who are already attuned to this. So I'm going to ask you to explain that in a moment. But first, you already know about EC just a little bit. Can you tell us? Because there's like a little bit of overlap. And you guys, I'm going to be on Meg's podcast soon as well to talk about EC to her audience. But yeah, what was your exposure to EC already?
Yes. So my co-founder of one of my businesses, which is called Play Sense, it's a playgroup program. She did EC with her 3 little boys, and I was along for the journey with her 3rd little one because we'd already founded our business then. And that was really my first exposure to it. And I was completely blown away the way that Lara, with 2 older toddlers, actually managed to really read her little one. And I think what blows me away, and I know it's not for everybody, but what really blows me away about EC is that it is probably the highest degree of kind of reflective parenting that you can get in the early days, because you've really got to be attuned to your baby. And I think that's what really impressed me about it. I don't think I would have been a very good EC mum myself, although I do think I was a good reflective mum. But that's kind of, really my first exposure. And Lara did an amazing job with little Timmy as he kind of did EC right from birth. Yeah.
You know what's so wonderful is everybody listening who might have also heard about EC and gone, oh man, that sounds great, but something that I probably couldn't do. Once they tried it once, they're completely blown away because it's not just a technique. That a lot of things that we learn are techniques, and that's good. We need tools in our tool bag for sure. But this one is so based on the baby's innate instincts that every single mom who says what you just said, they're so floored. They're so surprised. They're like, wow, this actually worked the first time and I hardly did anything and I have no idea what I'm doing. So
yeah, no, it's amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah. Yeah. If we could rewind a little bit, I wonder if it would have worked. And I also think that, that's where I come into is I give a lot of support. You say you spend a lot of time on your app. I spend a lot of time on all the things that we do here at Go Diaper Free because it's not innate. And I think so. Can we tell everybody your app is called Parent Sense, right?
Correct. Yeah.
You've got 51,000 users on it right now.
61. Yeah. So we were,
61.
yeah. So that's just gone up since we last sent that through to you. Yeah. So,
That's
you
amazing.
know, yeah. So we've had 61,000 people download and start using the app. On average, we have 10,000 monthly active users. So people who are on and off it all the time.
Wow.
It's an app that covers, really kind of the four main domains of early parenting, which is sleep, feeding, health, and play. And
Right.
so, for instance, in the play section, there's an activity for every single day of the baby's life. So,
Which
and
is so
because
good. Oh, I had no idea how to play with my baby when my first one came. I took 2 classes on it. I was clueless. You guys, this is
yeah,
so amazing.
yeah. And it's based on, because I'm an occupational therapist and I've worked with little ones with developmental delay, I know what you need to do in order to make sure your little one develops optimally. And so that's the play section. The feeding section is developed with myself and a dietitian who works on all of my dietetics work with me, Kath McGaw. And we go through how to wean your baby, but making sure that you are not going to develop allergies and that you're not going to have a picky eater, because there's quite specific things that you introduce at different times. So,
Right, right.
so those are just 2 domains, and it's a really exciting product.
I would love to add and see another domain added at some point of an optional EC domain because what comes in goes out. And how do we deal with that too?
Andrea, I think that is a brilliant idea, because we're launching our courses section of the app this week. It's actually going to be launching, coming up soon. And if we can put an EC course on there where you can hold mom's hands and take them through it, I would love to do that.
I
Really,
would
I would.
love to. And even in your app, just saying, hey, did you know that some moms decide to potty their babies from birth and they avoid potty training? You could check it out because I think that
Brilliant.
pregnant women, especially, we're so overwhelmed. We're just like, there are so many things that we've got to get right. It's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of information out there. It can be so overwhelming. And then once you have your baby, then that's like 24/7 and you're figuring out all the things. But if it comes across just their attention, they're like, oh, that's a possibility. It could actually make parenting a lot simpler. And we'll talk about that when I come onto your podcast because it simplifies
Definitely.
things. But I really want everybody listening to just remember what it was like when you first had your baby. If somebody had gone, hey, you can also do this thing and avoid poopy diapers, you might have been like, oh, cool. So we definitely want to get in front of pregnant moms as much as possible. But this app is so amazing. I downloaded it. And I put in that I'm pregnant, which I'm not, but maybe someday, God willing, have another baby. I really loved how it just was so encouraging. The whole feel of it was just like, I've got you, like Meg's got you. So you guys should definitely get the app right now. Okay, let's move on because I'm just tooting your horn because I was so impressed. It's such a really great job, Meg. It's so
Thank
good.
you, Andrea.
You're welcome. So, I want to talk about the baby sensory world and how that impacts sleep, feeding, development, etc. You have an episode on baby sensory personalities that might be interesting to my audience, and I'm going to link to that in the show notes so that they'll be able to fully read that or listen to that on your podcast. But tell us, what? Well, really, I know you're an OT, so I understand how you got to be interested in the sensory world. But why is this so important? And what should parents know about this?
Yeah, it really does hold the key to so many aspects of parenting. Newborns are born with the most incredible capacities. In fact, their sense of touch is 100% developed right from 12 weeks gestation, amazingly. Their sense of hearing is fully developed at 24 weeks gestation. And the last half of the pregnancy, your baby's actually learning through their sense of hearing. So by the time they're born, they can actually recognize their mother tongue, they can or their home language, they can recognize your voice. The only sense that isn't very well developed is the sense of sight, and that obviously develops very, very, rapidly after they're born. They are born being able to see. The miracle of life is that they can see exactly 20 centimeters, which is the distance from your breast to your nipple to your eyes. So your baby can see in perfect vision the perfect distance from a breast to your eyes. So it's just the miracle of life that babies are born just so perfectly. What happens, though, is that we have this womb world where little ones are taking in an enormous amount of sensory information from this womb space. But almost all of the sensory information that has been taken in is actually quite regulating sensory information. So I love the fact that you said you were a dancer and you've got a very high sense of your body. Now, that sense of your body is something we call proprioception, which is a receptor that's found in your muscles and joints.
Yes.
And your proprioceptive sense is your most powerful calming sense, interestingly. It really is a high regulator. And babies are born with an absolute overdose of that because the intrauterine space is so tight. The little babies are moving against this kind of elastic wall all the time. And so this intrauterine space is absolutely perfect. It doesn't have a lot going on visually. It's got the white noise of your body. It's got the lulling movement of the vestibular system. It's got high doses of proprioception from the pressure of the uterine walls. It's got sweet tastes and neutral tastes in the amniotic fluid, and tastes of the baby's own body as they suck their hands. And so here's this absolutely perfect uterine space for development. And of course, what happens is in a split second, just like our blood has to change direction when moving through our heart and our lungs, in a split second, babies are kind of presented with the absolute inundation of our sensory world, which is busy and noisy and bright. And, there's just no deep pressure. And, one of the things that, that I encourage parents to try and think of when they're thinking about calming their baby. So let's start at that point after the baby is born, is to go back to the womb world, because the womb world holds all the secrets.
Yeah, the first thing I'm thinking is swaddling or baby wearing, right? The Moby wrap.
That is
holding
exactly
skin to skin, all of that. Yeah,
exactly. And you've literally listed everything I would have said. So,
sorry.
No, it's perfect. It's absolutely
I've had 5 babies. I mean, at least by now I know. I'm glad. I'm gonna pat myself on the back.
And you're an instinctive parent. So yes, absolutely. The things that we can do is swaddle our babies, because it puts them back into that kind of womb space that's really tight and cuddled. We can have lots of white noise going on in the room when we're trying to help them sleep. Absolutely baby wearing. And in fact, in the early days, skin to skin, right up against your chest, naked on your body, is the best place for your baby. That really reenacts that womb world. Yeah. And so you can see in this little illustration, when we talk about the important implications of the sensory world, you can see that in those first 6 weeks, first 12 weeks, the fourth trimester, so the first 3 months after the baby's born, a lot of what we should be doing in terms of the principles of nurturing our babies must be based on the sensory world of the womb. So right from that point, we can see how important understanding the sensory world is.
I love that. And I love also how you say that babies are born perfectly. There is, I mean, the design of the human it just blows me away.
Crazy.
As all the physiology I've studied as a dancer, and also doing movement therapy, which I did for some time, without babies, before babies. And then all the work with EC, because, right when they come out, they instantly have sphincter control. They instantly can start to look to you for help going to the bathroom, not on themselves. And their sensory systems are so, well, I agree, that they're only able to see as far as they need to see. So they've got just enough of everything they actually need. Now, a lot of the medical textbooks will say they don't have sphincter control until 18 months, but those are written by the Pampers Institute, which they obviously have a little bit of money in the game. So we have the sensory system of the bladder filling and these signals going to their brain, and then the crying and the fussiness. And you also specialize in a little bit of colic and early infant crying, that some of that, and I would say we've estimated about a third of this unexplained fussing, is because they need to go to the bathroom. They don't want to go in their diaper because of those really strong instincts to not soil themselves, which all mammals are born with. So there's like some links that I'm kind of pulling from what you're saying, also related to what we're doing. And I think we all baby wear. Everybody listening baby wears, right? You do, right? Most everybody who does EC does, because we also get better signals from the baby for sleep, eating, peeing, needing to poop. All of that stuff comes much more strongly when we're tightly wound with our baby. Would you say the same thing from your experience of like responsiveness?
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. I mean, baby wearing for me is one of the most important things we can do in the early days. And there are a number of reasons. You've mentioned one of them, that we are more attuned to our babies when they're on us. And I always used to say that, those strollers that face away from you and you're pushing your baby and they're kind of facing towards the world. It's the saddest thing, because you're seeing none of your baby's signals. You're not responding to them, to what they're needing, and to what they're trying to engage with you. So if you are going to use a stroller, it must face towards you, but preferably pop your baby up against you. It's incredible what babies learn about socialization that way. They reference off the way that you speak to another human being. So when you meet somebody, your response to them, your joy for meeting somebody new, they get that. And that wires them for being social. So
they're literally absorbing. They're literally absorbing your social
time.
skills. Yeah.
Completely.
And does it also calm and regulate and center their behavior?
It does. So the other
or their well-being? Yeah.
Yeah, and the other two very important aspects. The one is that the vestibular system, which is based in the inner ear, and actually develops alongside the hearing system, so it's fully developed at 24 weeks gestation. That system is a system that really triggers calming, or really accesses calming for little ones. And that's one of the reasons why when a mom is busy during the day, when she's pregnant, her baby sleeps. And the minute she lies down to go to sleep in the night, her baby wakes up because
Right. That's so annoying. You're like,
so
wait, I need
annoying.
to sleep and now you're
Yes,
kicking me.
exactly. And that's because the lulling movement was so calming. So we know that for babies who are fractious and who are irritable and who won't settle to sleep, the vestibular system's great for that. And then the third massive impact of the vestibular system is that it impacts on our motor skills. So there's a connection between the vestibular system and the muscles that goes down what's called the vestibular spinal tract, down the spine. And it gives little signals to your muscles. And that those signals build up muscle tone, and that muscle tone provides the basis for equilibrium reactions and other balance reactions, and eventually gross motor coordination. So our little ones who are worn and have all that little bit of kind of vestibular rotation and movement all the time are actually more robust on a motor level. So, for instance, when you put them down on the mat on tummy time, because I don't like putting babies anywhere else but on the mat if they're not in your arms, because they need tummy time. They're more
Agreed.
likely to lift up their head and actually start to develop their extensor muscles, and then roll a little earlier, and they're more likely to crawl. So it has a real impact on motor development as well. So on three levels: social, and then also obviously the emotional, calming, and then also obviously the gross motor is very
That's
important.
amazing. Okay, so which baby carrier do you love the most right now for
Okay.
moms?
I think there's only one baby carrier, and I'll tell you why. I don't know if you can get it in the States, and I hope that you can. It's called the Snuggle-Roo carrier. I know that you can get it on Amazon in the UK, and I'll tell you why I love it. The reason I love it is that it's like a wrap carrier. So the Moby wrap is the one that you love, which I also love. And that's a long strand of fabric. And for
Very
many
long, very
parents, it's
hard to put on.
very long. It's hard to put on. And
Yes.
so what Snuggle-Roo did, and it's just the cleverest product, is they took exactly the same fabric. It wraps and it has exactly the same functionality. If you looked at it without seeing the back, you would go, it's a long wrap
Oh, I
carrier.
see it. Oh my gosh. Okay,
And
we're gonna put a link for this. Wow, it looks like it, but it's got clips in the back.
it's got clips in the back, so it fits over your head, and it's just the most astounding product. It was developed by a physiotherapist, and a very, very serious attachment parent herself. And she
Oh,
actually wore her babies in that naked for a while. They were naked so that they could be naked on her chest.
love it.
Um,
Oh, and
and
the
they,
dad wearing the baby. Oh, I
yeah.
love
So
this.
it's really an awesome product. So yes. So you asked me. That is actually my favorite carrier.
Okay, well, so I don't think they carry it in the US. It looks like they do have it in the UK, Ireland, and France. Well, maybe I can convince them to let me carry it. We'll look into that because
Mm,
that looks like an awesome carrier.
it's
The best of
wonderful.
both worlds. Like I like the
Mm,
Bico carrier because it's convertible for many different ways of wearing
mhm.
your baby over time. And then the Ergo, is maybe my third favorite. The Moby's my
When they're a
second,
bit
but it's too big.
older, the
Yeah.
ergo's great when they're older. I
Yes, I
love
agree.
that. 9 months onwards, definitely an ergo baby carrier, no question. But under
Definitely.
9 months, you want that soft fabric. It goes back to that sensory world. It needs to be
Yes.
soft. It needs to
And
feel
it's stretchy too. So you're basically
exactly,
being held with it. So there's the Moby,
exactly.
and then I'll link to the other one that I have. Oh, it's the Baby Catan. That's another one
Yes,
that's really
it's
stretchy that
nice.
looks kind of like this one. And then yeah,
Mm,
we'll see if we can't get one of these. We need to do this in
yeah.
the States. Okay, so everybody who's listening who does not baby wear, or maybe you feel guilty now that you've heard all this information, because this is like such good information about why you should baby wear. Maybe today's the day that you put on that baby carrier that you've been avoiding using because you've been trying to get a break, and wear your baby and see what happens. The other thing that relates to EC is when they try to escape their baby carrier or they start to feel uncomfortable in it, moving around, instead of shushing them into comfort, as an ECer, I would recommend you take the baby out, potty the baby, put the baby back in, and it's like magic. They settle
I love
down,
that.
they're comfortable for longer, they sleep better, and they can really relax because they don't have the urge to go to the bathroom. They used to do that. So I have two stories, really quick ones. In Infant Potty Training, which Lori Bouquet wrote, which is like an encyclopedia of all these anthropological studies of EC over a lot of recent history, but mostly other places in the world. She learned that babies would be taken out of the sling and aimed at a bush. They say "Psst," or they just aim them and they start going and they go in the bush and they put them back in the sling. So it was very much like a convenience thing too for nomadic peoples and people who are very busy with their hands all day. And the second thing I wanted to share was I was in Africa, in Ghana, West Africa, for dance in the year 2000. And I did not have any awareness about, I didn't want babies. I didn't want babies until I learned you could avoid poopy diapers, to be honest. I didn't want them because I was like, this is disgusting. But, but when I was there, so I didn't really pay attention, but none of the kids were in diapers, obviously. And I saw babies wrapped onto their moms' backs, brand new newborns with no neck control at all. And these moms were dancing as fast as possible. The baby's head is flailing all over. And I was like, oh, is that okay? And then I looked at the little ones and they were all so mobile. Yep. They were all so confident and steady. And none of them were crying ever. I never saw a crying child in 30 days. And we were surrounded by children all the time. Mm-hmm. So it just made me wonder. And then seeing babies worn in that way, you know, I think it was like 3 yards of fabric just wrapped around the mom with this baby on the back.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder how, I mean, I'm not advising anybody to be like, you know, wild with your baby, but how they are already so equipped to be in this world and they're constantly absorbing that information on how to be mobile and they're building muscle mass even from that system, which just blows my mind. I've just learned so much from you just in the short minutes we've been talking. And I just want everybody who's listening, just if this is interesting to you, try it out. Let's put it into action because this is really, you know?
Yeah, you really should. I mean, I was born in Africa. And so in Africa, we call it Diaper, where you put a baby on your back and you actually just take a large towel and you wrap it around the baby really, really tightly. Yeah. And the baby's legs kind of wrap around the side of the mom's, which by the way, is the best position for hips because it actually prevents hip dysplasia. So it's quite amazing. So, and they would wear their babies like that. And all 3 of my children in Africa, we often do have nannies we're very lucky. We have nannies in our homes who help us look after our children. Mm-hmm. And the nanny who brought up my children is the most incredible woman called Nancy. She's still one of my very good friends. Mm-hmm. And she used to do it with my little ones. You know, she never used my sling. I always had a sling for my little ones. In those days, I hadn't discovered the Snuggle-Roo carrier. So I had my sling and my babies lived in the sling. And in fact, you know, to the point when you say that some parents don't do it, my husband would not let me walk out of the house if I was going to the shops unless I'd left him with a sling to look after the baby because he knew that if he had a sling, he would be fine because all 3 of my babies would be absolutely fine the minute they were in the sling. And so I've got gorgeous photographs of him dressed up as a pirate, playing pirates with my 7-year-old son, with our 3rd baby in the sling, like 3 days old, so that he could actually give me a little bit of time to sleep while he played with the kids and looked after the newborns. So
can we just take a moment to thank all the dads? Because I know we have about 5% dads who listen, but they also help with pottying the babies because they don't really feel like they can help breastfeed. And there's a lot of stuff that's just like, the baby wants mom, she wants you all the time. But if you wear your baby, dads, oh my gosh, there's so much bonding that happens there. So much. And the baby's happier.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you also then, so how does sensory world impact feeding? And then I want to talk about development. And we'll sleep as well. We'll just hit on these just a little bit because I want them to go and look at your information, your books and your app to learn more deeply. But how does this interrelate?
So you know, babies are all different, and I mean, you've got 5 kids, Andrea, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, right. So you know that
all
every single one is completely different, and I mean, there's some great twin studies that show that even biologically almost identical, genetically, babies are also very different. And the reason why they're different is that they have different sensory personalities. So, and for a lot more information, people can go and listen to the podcast, but where I go into it. But just as in a nutshell, these 4 different sensory personalities, some babies are very settled babies. A lot can go on in their world without them noticing it because they have high levels of habituation in their brain. Some babies are social butterflies who really need a lot of sensory information. They seek sensory information all the time, and they're actually quite unsettled if they're not being stimulated and having something fed into their systems on a sensory level. And they tend to be very busy as toddlers. The 3rd type of baby is slow to warm up. They are suspicious of new sensory information. They're not sure if it's safe, and it takes them time to warm up and engage. And my 3rd baby was one of those. And then the 4th type of personality is our sensitive baby, who is everything in the world is really a threat to them because they perceive it as painful. Now, you can imagine those 4 different sensory personalities will feed very differently. So let's take, for example, and my heart always goes out to mums who battle to breastfeed, because I think most
Yes.
mums start off, with an intent of, I really do want to breastfeed. And some of them just don't, it doesn't happen. And there's a lot of blame and shaming that happens for those mums. But sometimes it really is that a little one is so sensitive that that sensory world of being up against a mom and being against her skin, and then having to deal with changing flavors and changing speed of the breast milk coming out, because that's very different to bottle feeding, is too
Yeah.
overwhelming for them, and they actually can't settle into breastfeeding. So they're really tricky feeders from that perspective. Now,
Mhm.
those babies often go on to be very tricky feeders on solids. So they
Yeah.
gag for a long time. They don't like new flavors. And so your sensitive feeder, or your sensitive baby, tends to be a really tricky feeder from the get-go. And in fact, in my clinical practice, a fair amount of the babies that I saw were actually babies who were failing to thrive just because they couldn't tolerate food. The texture and the flavor
Mm.
was just so threatening for them.
So
So
for
that's
them, is bottle feeding better?
not necessarily better, because what happens with them is when you start to, when they eventually do take to to breast milk, they're great breastfeeders. But if you ever
Okay.
try then to introduce a bottle, they then won't take to the teat. So it's not so
Mm.
much that anything's better or worse. And obviously, the actual nutrition in breast milk is arguably better than formula.
Of course.
Uh,
I was thinking
but
pumped
that's
breast
a
milk, but
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
So
So
so you would want to get them used to it and get as much support as
yeah,
possible to get them
to
used to
get
it.
support. Exactly. And
Yes,
something
yes.
interestingly like swaddling, and I speak about this in one of my books, a swaddling is amazing for those babies. They tend to feed better when they're swaddled, because what
Mm.
swaddling does is it actually almost forms a barrier around the baby so that they're not having as much input from the rest of the world. And so they're actually better able to feed.
It's like
So there
having
are
a weighted
strategies.
blanket. It's like having a weighted blanket for an autistic
Absolutely.
child. Yeah. I have one
Exactly.
child who has
Exactly.
Asperger's, and I would put him in
Yeah.
that sensitive
Yeah.
category for sure. Not
Exactly.
that that predicted that, but it definitely pretty
Yeah.
much goes
It is.
hand in
Yeah.
hand with his current habits. But if I put
Exactly.
a heavy blanket on him or wrap him in something, oh, he's so happy. Even he's
Exactly.
11.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
still
No,
happy when I do
exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Huh.
then another personality, just as an example, and I'll only just give one more example of how sensory personalities impact feeding, would be your social butterfly. So I described how
Mm.
that baby is A, very social, but B, seeks out sensory information all the time. Now, what happens with them is when they go onto solid food, they are like in heaven, because up until now, everything has tasted the same. It's been the same color. It's been absolutely boring. And now suddenly there's like the smorgasbord of color and texture and flavor. And you can just imagine that they are like, yes, more. And so they tend to wean really easily. But then after a couple of weeks, if you leave them on very bland solids, you actually end up with quite a fussy eater. So they kind of,
Mm.
particularly if you start them on, for instance, rice cereal, which is the old fashioned style of, people used to recommend rice cereal as your first food, which we don't anymore at all.
Yeah, I don't.
But
Yeah.
no, we definitely don't do that. But
That
having
was
said
like the
that,
80s and the 70s and
yeah,
60s.
yeah, and even around like the 90s, they were still doing
Really?
it. I can tell you, yep, because my firstborn was born in the very late 90s, right at the end, and in those days it was rice cereal. And anyway, but he's a social butterfly, so he
Mhm.
started very happily on rice cereal because he was so excited that it wasn't milk. And then after a week, was like, I'm bored with this. And so when you're weaning those babies, you want to wean them quite rapidly with bright flavor and bright texture. And something like baby led weaning is really great for them because they can control it, they can explore, they can mush it in their hands, they
Yeah.
can smell it, they can, And so you can see just in those 2 little illustrations that I've spoken about, how sensory personalities really impact feeding. And so if
And
you,
I interviewed Katie Ferraro of Baby Led Wean Team, and so I'm going to link to that episode as well in our show notes so people can look at that interview. But we covered so many things about how we introduced so many. Like I thought I was doing baby led weaning, but I wasn't even close. It was definitely, and now I'm
yeah,
thinking back, and I'm like, okay, I definitely had. My 3-year-old is probably raiding the cabinets right now as we're on this interview because she
yeah,
all day, every day she is so busy and she is literally
yeah,
tasting
yeah,
life through
yes.
food all day.
Yeah, and she's probably a social butterfly, isn't
She
she?
is
Yeah,
totally. Yeah.
yeah,
This is
exactly.
so interesting.
And so you can see how, like, if you understand your baby's sensory personality, like, it just makes parenting so much easier because instead of thinking, I've got a fussy eater because he doesn't want rice cereal, if that's what it is anymore, you're thinking, oh no, he's gregarious. He needs something more interesting. And so it changes the way you parent your babies when you understand their sensory personality.
I love that. And I'm wondering, so I'm going to look more into this and I'm going to listen to this podcast on sensory personalities and kind of analyze my own kids, but also compare it to their potty style because some of them preferred different potties in different orders. Some of them wanted the variety of potties. Some of them my second would only use one potty that has Dora the Explorer on it. She didn't even know who that was. And I literally had to put that in my diaper bag. Like I had a giant bag that I just had to fit the potty in because she wouldn't go on any other seat anywhere ever. So it's interesting. And you guys listening, I'm probably going to have to look into this and make a little study of this about how these parallel because if you're thinking that you're just doing poorly at EC or breastfeeding or sleep or any of that, you're probably not. You definitely are not. It's just that your baby has a different temperament, but a different personality and then different sensory needs. That brings it down that's even more sensible than, their temperament is just different. Because then you're like, well, I have to deal with this temperament their whole life, but I don't understand it. So I see where this can unveil a whole nother level of understanding so that we can give our babies customize what they need.
Exactly. And Andrea, I'm going to share with you, I actually did a talk last night, interestingly, on potty training. So this was for parents who had not chosen EC, they had chosen to potty train.
Which is most parents. Great.
Which is most parents, yeah.
Yes.
And I started the talk, but with the sensory personalities, because actually the sensory personalities potty train very differently. So with your settled baby and your social butterflies, they tend to have quite high thresholds for sensory information, which you'll learn about in the podcast. But what's very interesting about that is that it means that they don't get the same degree of signals from the interoceptors, which are the pressure organs around the bladder that indicate that I'm full, I'm ready to go. They don't get the same signals. And so they tend to take a little longer to potty train because they just have a lot more little mistakes. And I would be interested if it isn't the same with EC, that your more sensitive little one, like maybe, of your 5 kids, your more sensitive little ones or the slow to warm up, we also call them, they have a lower threshold for sensory information. So they might have actually perceived those signals earlier and also signaled them more overtly to you, like, okay, I'm ready. Whereas maybe your settled baby, I don't know if you did have a really settled baby, the very laid back babies, they don't always perceive the signals and they also don't always signal themselves. And so they might be a little bit more tricky to EC as well.
Yeah. And what was the fourth one? So there's settled, social butterfly, sensitive.
And slow to warm up. So the slow to warm up will engage with the world. I don't know your little ones, but your Dora Explorer story does make me think that she might be a slow to warm up because what they tend to do is they like to control their world. They like to have predictability because it makes their world feel safe. And so they tend to be a little bit more specific. So they like to wear certain clothes if they're toddlers. They like to do things in certain ways. When they're toddlers, they don't like carrots to touch potato on the plate. They just like things to be just so. Those slow to warm up. So
yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. So I have the really laid back Cooper. My third was settled. And he was the hardest for me. I could have taken him out of diapers at 12 months, but I would have had to have relied so much just on transition times and his timing and not expected any signals. I waited till 17 months to take him out of daytime diapers, but he was pooping in the toilet since birth. So all of them were pooping in the toilet from birth because that's easy. But I definitely saw that with him. And then the social butterfly, which I would think was Twyla, my fifth. She sometimes will pee her pants just a tiny bit and then come and say, I need to pee, and then go pee. And then she's like, I need new pants, So she's very busy. And I think a lot of people listening are like, I have a really busy child who pees a little bit and then just keeps playing. And then I've got my sensitive one would be Kaiva, my first. Absolutely out of diapers at 9.5 months, telling me every time by 17 months, very, very specifically, like, I am not okay with this. This is happening. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
And then I had my slow to warm up would definitely be my second, Isadora. She definitely likes predictability. She is a planner. Oh, she's 8 now. She's like, okay, so Saturday, this is happening, then that's happening. Did I get that right? And I'm like, could you just chill about all the, everything doesn't need to be planned out.
She's making her world predictable. Exactly.
She definitely is. And she's very specific, has her preferences. That potty was definitely, when I figured that out, it was like, oh, okay, I've got this. And I have a fifth child too, Branson, number 4. Oh, he's just got such a temper. Where does he even fit in? He's not settled. He's more sensitive. He's
Mm,
more sensitive. And so I took all of them out of diapers around 12 months, except for Cooper, and Kaiba was earlier at 9 months. But the sensitive Branson, I just was like, 12 months, let's just do it. And he completely synced up and it worked great.
mm,
And he's definitely sensitive like his brother
mm.
Kaiva. So you
Interesting.
guys, this is hugely informative. And it's not that so and then we take it from potty training, well, it's not going to be as easy or it's going to take longer or there aren't as many signals. With EC, we have 4 ways, and I'll cover this when you interview me, but
Mm,
there's 4 different ways that we can do EC. By the signals, which not all babies do, and they definitely don't do it during certain periods, because if they're in a tribal situation, they could just go out and pee outside. They don't need you at a certain point, so they stop signaling, but then they start again once they're walking. But we can rely on natural timing, transition times. Hey, when would a 3-year-old need to go? Let's just remind them. Let's just take them when they wake up. Let's
mm,
take them before they sit down for food so they can settle longer. There are different ways to do EC based on our intuition too.
mm,
So it doesn't all have to be around signals. And I would have to say the difference between potty training and EC is that EC can be done without any signals or verbal language from the child, including with developmentally delayed children. And you still get the same result. And some of them do take longer, though, to initiate the process, but we also are already done. We're
mm,
just supporting them as an individual until
mm,
they get to where okay, I'm going to tell you now every time, which is,
mm.
it varies. And you guys, I think it varies based on these personalities. This is the closest I've ever seen to explaining what I've seen over the last 12 years.
That's
I'm so excited. I'm
amazing.
talking so fast. I'm just like, wow, I'm so excited. This is great.
Wonderful.
This
Oh,
is
wonderful. Yeah,
lovely.
definitely go and listen to the podcast because what we do in that, what I
Yes.
do in the podcast is I go through all of the personalities and why they actually, on a neurological level, what's actually going on for the little ones as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll do a little follow up to this someday soon that has a better analysis of that and what to do if you have this personality, then what you might need to tweak or rely more on with EC so that it's less frustrating for both of you.
Yeah,
Ooh. And then
absolutely.
I'll share
Very
that with
exciting.
you, and you can share that with
Yes.
your people.
Love it. I
I
love it.
love it. Okay, so
Mm.
so that was that enough? Do you think to kind of introduce us to the sensory world for sleep feeding development, or do we want to touch on sleep and development at all?
Yeah, and I think that's enough. I mean, I think it does impact every single area of our
Everything,
parenting.
of
One
course.
one thing that I would like to say is that when you're starting to understand your baby's sensory personality, you're doing what we call reflective parenting, which is understanding that there's a state or an intent and a personality behind the behavior, and I think that's just so important for parenting and for all parenting. Where it prevents you from just reacting to behaviors, which is really not a great way to parent. To say, well, that's naughty, or that that's bad. When you stop and you go, okay, so it's not naughty, it's not bad, it's not difficult. Difficult's the word people often use, or
Yeah,
tricky.
right.
That's you, and I'm recognizing you. I'm recognizing your state, and I can actually interpret it for you. And when parents start to do that, they really are helping their little ones to learn to self-regulate, which is obviously a very important life skill.
Because they're modeling that for their child.
Yeah, yeah. So, for instance, if you've got a little one who gets overwhelmed, you're slow to warm up, and your sensitive little ones, they get really overwhelmed. Like, you take them to a birthday party, and within an hour of being there, there's going to be some behavior, like they're going to bite somebody, or they're going to push someone, or they're going to have a temper
Yes,
tantrum, and it's
completely. Yeah.
yeah, and it's really tricky. And
Yeah.
instead of going, well, such a difficult child, you're rather going to go, I think you might be feeling itchy in your skin, or I think you might be feeling like you're just tired and want to go home. And when you start to give them the words for what's actually going on for them, they can then start to articulate that for you at a later stage, and that's part of kind of behavior, and actually the root of discipline, because effectively discipline is, I mean, if you're getting it really right with your little one, it's them being able to actually reflect for themselves before they do the behavior that is undesirable or whatever it is. So,
Oh, I love that.
um,
That's way deeper
mm,
learning than just saying, "Don't do
mm,
that."
exactly, exactly, yeah,
And when you
yeah,
give them the words for things, and with EC, we also give them a language for
mm,
everything. We give a sign. So this is the need to go potty sign, which I've
mm,
just saw a video of a baby who was not just a few months old doing the sign.
amazing,
And
yeah,
about 8 months old, they can do that and they can give words to what's going on. So we name what's happening when it's happening, like potty training a puppy. You say
Mhm.
go pee pee when they're going to the
Mhm.
bathroom.
Mhm.
So we're also in the emotional social state, noticing, you're saying, in this reflective parenting, what's happening depending on your child's personality, then giving them the words to understand that, which
Mhm.
helps them learn how to identify that in themselves ahead of time, eventually, and self regulate.
Exactly, exactly. So one of the talks that I'm often asked to do is on behavior and discipline, and I have this little strategy, which and I know we don't have the whole day to talk, but the strategy is what I call the ABC strategy, and A stands for acknowledge, B stands for boundary, and C stands for choice. And that acknowledge, and this works for everything, for for temper tantrums, it just it really does unlock a lot when it comes to discipline. And the A is the acknowledge, and it's acknowledging the underlying state, the behavior, or the intent. So I know that you want another cookie. So, and just giving them the words, or I know that you're feeling tired and grumpy right now, just that acknowledgement. And then the B is the boundary, the thing that they cannot cross. So, but you can't have another cookie before supper, but even though you're tired, you can't push your brother, or whatever it is. And then C is the choice, which is, you must never corner a bear. Make sure there's always an out. So, you can do this or you can do this, and you kind of choose two options that you're prepared to live with. But that basis to behavior and discipline is amazing, because it really does help little ones to understand why they are about to push their friend or bite their friend or do whatever they were about to do, because you have identified that emotional and that intent, and you haven't taken that away from them. You've told them, yep, I know that. I understand it, but you still can't cross the boundary.
Right, and I love that so much. I have one child in particular who throws massive tantrums. Has done it since he was 16 months old, like every day, every single day. He did it today. He's 5. He just turned 5, and it is so hard. What's hard for me is around 5 different children all the time, and having the pressures of, I recently got divorced, and I also have a business to run, and there's a lot of things, and I have a lot of support, but it's still a lot of children. I'm outnumbered,
Mm.
and to be able to prevent things is pretty much impossible. I
Mm.
can kind of sometimes sense that something's about to happen and intervene. Oftentimes, they work it out themselves if I just stay out of it. But
Mm.
when there's some kind of danger to another person, which happens quite regularly, I've got 2 who love
Mm.
to wrestle all the time, and they get very
Mm.
physical very fast because they're
Mm.
about 18 months apart and they're both boys. But we have this, we're building an understanding. So even though it's not happening as quickly as I'd like, because he is definitely the sensitive personality, it's not happening as fast as I want it to. But he is developing the little blocks of language to identify himself. And he'll often tell somebody else, you need to take some deep breaths, and
I love
so,
that. Yeah.
but as a parent, I just want to resonate with anybody listening who feels like, well, the ABC method sounds great and I'm a little bit overwhelmed. It's hard to implement. Just stay with it, because it does pay off and it does help. And it's a long learning process for some kids, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no, it
And for
definitely is.
some, yeah.
And for your sensory sensitive little ones, they really do battle to regulate their emotions. And that's a whole other thing. I mean, you one of the building blocks in the trajectory towards self-regulation, the second building block actually is sensory regulation. So if you are very sensitive, it's going to impact on your emotional lability. You're going to be much more emotionally labile. And then that in turn impacts on behavior, which comes on the next level up. And so you are going to then act it out. And then the final level up is your cognitive regulation. So that's the way regulation moves. But the building block, the very bottom one, or it's actually the second level, because there's physiological under that. But the second level is sensory regulation. And so if you are dysregulated and very, very sensitive, or for instance, on the spectrum as an example, you're going to battle to have the foundation for then the next level, which is emotional regulation.
Oh, I love that. How that builds. Is there somewhere that you have that? Is it like a pyramid or something?
It's a
Is it in,
pyramid.
is it
It was
in,
in. I can send it through to you, and you can pop it in the show notes if you'd like to.
I would
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Is it in one of your books or,
It's actually not in one of my books. I do professional lectures to therapists around the world, and that is actually it's in my course on for therapists.
oh, I
But
would
I can
love
send
that.
it to you. It's fascinating, and EC fits right into it, because the very bottom level, so under sensory regulation, is physiological regulation, which
Mhm.
fascinatingly begins to develop at 34 weeks in utero, 34 weeks gestation. And by 2 weeks, most babies have actually established quite high levels of physiological regulation. They can regulate their breathing and their body temperature and so on. And it's that basis of good physiological regulation that then goes on to form the basis for sensory regulation, the basis for emotional regulation, behavioral, and then finally
And I
cognitive.
wonder if that gives babies who are pottied from birth, which has happened for all of human history except for the recent couple hundred years. This is what babies have how they've always been raised with their regards to their hygiene. It makes me wonder if that makes that foundation stronger because we are not shushing that part of them into go, no, no, go in this diaper, even though it's against everything in your being. Go in this diaper and you're okay. Just do that for now and for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it goes completely against the way that we're built, but it also probably messes with that foundation a little bit because I mean, really in 1957, 92% of all children in America were potty trained by 18 months.
Yep.
And
Yep.
now the average, which is the central age, is 36 months.
Correct.
So, and that's only 2 generations, and it's because of diaper companies. And I've talked to diaper executives. Like it was intentional. So we think about this physiological regulation block is the bottom of the pyramid, you guys. That's where everything starts. So doing even once a day of offering your baby the potty as an alternative to the diaper is going to help build that foundation. I strongly
absolutely.
believe that.
And especially if you're doing it in response to their signals, which is what you're doing because you're then hearing your baby. And it's really interesting in my book, Weaning Sense, which is my 7th book, which is one of the two of my books are bestsellers. That's one of them. But in that book, what's really interesting is that we talk about intuitive eating. And this freaks moms out because intuitive eating is giving your baby complete control over the quantity that they eat. And for the control freak mother that I certainly was, and there are many of us in the world, it's like, how do I give my child control for how much they can eat? But the reality is that babies are intuitive eaters and they will fill their tummy as much as they need to. And there's 2 caveats to that. The one is that you have to give them wholesome food. So if you're giving them sugar and you're messing with their insulin levels or highly processed carbohydrates, you can't trust their instincts because they're messed with already. So you've got to have whole food is the one principle. And the other principle is that you have to control when they're offered food. So the mother, and in my book, Weaning Sense, we talk about that moms and dads, you control the what, where, and when, and then the baby controls how much. And it's that sort of kind of allowing little ones to really listen to their own signals and validate their signals, which is exactly what you're doing with EC. That is so important, and it leads to healthier eating habits long term.
Absolutely. And also when you're also determining when, and Katie brought this up with baby-led weaning as well. Instead of forcing them, you're saying, no, this is what I'm offering. And it's a bunch of whole foods and varieties of colors and flavors. And this is when we're eating, but there's not that pressure. They are then allowed to control that decision. So we definitely went over that. And you heard, I think you might have.
I listened to the podcast. Yeah, it was lovely.
Listened to that one. Yeah, because the Picky Eaters episode. So that, in addition to, when we offer a potty-tunity, which is an opportunity to use the potty. It's our little lingo. And it's not that the baby has to go. It's that at this time, every day, we're going to offer this to you. And actually, it's not even a time of day. It's part of the rhythm and routine of the day. After you get down from the high chair, I'm going to offer this to you. Before bedtime, I'm going to offer this to you. And also playing on the antidiuretic hormone that wears off when all mammals wake up. I'm going to offer you the potty in the morning because all mammals need to go after they wake up. So we're aligning with that. Like somebody listening is like, oh, but I don't have any signals. This is going to work. But it does, and it can, and it will, and signals will come and go. But what's definitely consistent is, as a mom, when am I going to offer? And then the baby really literally gets to choose if they want to go then or not. Do they have to or not? And it becomes, there's no power struggle in it, which is also what I'm hearing with your Weaning Sense book. We're not trying to make a power struggle happen. We're trying to raise autonomous, sovereign children who are really owning their own bodies.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. I love all this so much. Oh. Okay. Is there anything else you would like to enlighten us about? Because I just cannot wait to just refer everybody to send me. I have some of your books written out, but I want everything. I want to know where to find you. But are there any final comments before that? Before we wrap up?
Yeah, no, I mean, really, I mean, it's been very, very wonderful speaking to you. I think that, I think that we're so aligned with getting mums to understand that they can read signals and that there's an intent behind the signals that babies are giving. And that's, it's huge. And whether or not you choose to, do EC or not, or follow baby led weaning is, that's what happens on the outside. But what happens on the inside is your relationship. And that's, for me, is the most important thing, which,
It really is. Yeah. And I just want to also further define signals also as, I take it as signs. You get telltale signs, like they're not looking at you and saying, I need to go potty or
no,
I'm
no, no,
hungry, but you
no.
have signs that the baby's giving off. Like the baby
Absolutely. Yeah.
starts to yawn and starts to, rub their eyes. You get
Just
sleeping
wriggle.
signals. Or just
Yeah.
wriggle. Just a wriggle is
Yeah,
a signal.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about when I talk about signals. And I can remember that very well from my experience of EC with Lara. That I was at her home with her 6-week-old Timmy, and he started to wriggle, and she said, "Oh, he needs to potty now," and it was just, and he did. And she said, "That's how it happens." She said, "I knew that was his signal because I've been watching him for the last 6 weeks, and when he does that wriggle thing, that's his signal."
Right.
And so
We learn
she got
it.
to know. Yeah,
We make a study of our babies and we learn it. So
yeah.
we learn how to feed them. We learn how
Mm,
to give them sleep so that everybody's well-being is
mm,
heightened. We learn about their development so we can give them the
mm,
correct opportunities for play at the correct times, which I so cannot wait to look at all of your play information too.
mm.
And then we learn when they need to go to the bathroom. We do a lot of observation. That's what my new app, The Log, is about. We're logging
Lovely.
and observing for signals and signs and things. I mean, you
Mm,
could even log all of this stuff in there. It's really basically learning what are the rhythms of your baby and how can you be a good reflective parent. Yeah,
mm,
you're not. Yeah, there's just so
mm.
much connectivity there
Yeah,
where
yeah,
you're
no, for
trying to
sure.
sync up with your baby and provide what they need
Yeah,
when they need it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I guess the best way to finish this off, because I mean, we've spoken about so much gold standard stuff today, and we know that that's not parenting. We know that
it's
it's
not
gritty, and
possible. Yeah.
I always love. I think it's Edtronic's work that talks about. Or in fact, it's not. Is it Bowlby? I've now forgotten. But Winnicott, it's Winnicott. He talks about being the good enough parent, and
Yeah.
the good enough parent gets it right like 20% of the time, and
It's not that
they're not.
often. Yeah.
It's not that often, and but when they get it wrong, they repair afterwards. And little kiddies are absolutely fine with that. And I think that's an important message for mums. There's so much pressure to do things perfectly. Um, and if you're just getting it right 20% of the time, you're doing a great job. And that's an important
Absolutely.
message.
Absolutely. You guys listen to that. Do you hear that? Please stop trying to be 100% all the time. This
Yeah.
is the gold standard. We're talking about in a perfect world, if we could do all the things perfectly, this is
Mhm.
what it would look like. But also, I feel like the reason that we're sharing this today, and I'm so glad that you're such a wealth of information, Meg, is because there's going to be something in this episode. You might want to re listen to it a couple of times just to get what is that one or two, what are the one or two things that are you're going to take those and go, okay, I'm going to baby wear more. I'm going to do EC once a day. I'm going to, what are the things? I'm going to get the
Mhm.
app and check out and see what Meg suggests about play.
Mhm.
Whatever the one thing that stood out to you in this episode is good enough. And if we can give that to each parent listening
Mhm.
during this episode, then I feel like our work has been done.
Yeah,
Would you
I
agree?
agree, Andrea. I really do. Yeah. It's been super chatting to you. I've loved today.
Lovely. Yeah. Thank you. Where can
Yeah.
we find you on Instagram, Facebook?
I'm
Um,
Meg Faure. Meg Faure is on both Facebook, Instagram. I've got a TikTok account that's just been started up with a little bit of content on there. And then my podcast, which is called Sense by Meg Faure, if they're looking
and
for that.
Faure is spelled Faure. And that's why I didn't say your last name in the beginning because I was like, I don't know how to pronounce that. Meg Faure. So Megfaure.
Correct. That's
We
it.
will look you
Yeah.
up. And then there are books called Baby Sense, Feeding Sense, Weaning Sense, Sleep Sense, and more. And we will link to all of those in the show notes. Meg, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful, Andrea. We look forward to chatting soon again.
Yeah, definitely.